Coming up on today's show, MLW scores a new TV deal.
It's the anniversary of Rick Rude's passing.
Charlotte Flair suspended.
A&E biography series gets a scorching review from an unlikely source.
This week's NXT and Dynamite matches.
New Japan Cup Finals this Friday.
Travis attempts Backlash 2002, trivia, and more on today's 80th episode of the Daily Wrestling News Show. This is the Daily Wrestling News for April 20th, 2021. We are powered by the Eastern Observer. My name is Ryan Joy, and I'm coming to you live from Minutes to Belltime Studios on the beautiful Treasure Coast of the Sunshine State. I'm joined today by the salesman of fun himself with his Pinnacle shirt on, Travis Severance. Good morning.
Good morning. It's good to be back in my regularly scheduled Tuesday slot. I feel nice and comfy and cozy here. The dogs are all aligned with this normal time period, so we're back in the saddle again, doing what we usually do on Tuesday morning. So glad to be here.
And I want to tease it right now, right at the start of the show, that people need to stay tuned all the way to the end because Travis is going to debut his new segment, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, at the end. So stay tuned for that. But
hanger.
I think our lead story this week or today is MLW scoring that major TV deal. They are going to Vice this May. Which is
that's great. That's awesome. I'm excited to see that. And it's still kind of up in the air whether or not this is going to replace the show that they're currently doing with Fusion. So we may see Fusion and we may see this new thing. I know there was some conversation about it possibly being called Rebellion or something like that. So I know Court's got an announcement today. So
yeah, Court has another announcement coming tonight on Fusion. Of course, tonight's will be like a taped announcement. And that's most likely going to be the return of live fans, but who knows? I mean, it could be to pile on to this news about Vice, but no matter how you look at it, Vice has realized that there are ratings in wrestling. They had good ratings with the Dark Side of the Ring series, specifically the Owen Hart and Chris Benoit series. Episodes did really, really well, better than any 3 or 4 Impact episodes together.
So and I think Vice is one of those channels too, where I think most major cable companies, you don't have to get any kind of special sports package or something like that to have Vice. It's not like the beIN Sports stuff that we've seen and stuff from other companies. So should be a good thing as far as exposure goes, and then being able to get some eyeballs on the product with more consistency. I'm interested to see where they decide to put the show, what the time frame looks like, and where they're going to place it, because there's no shortage of wrestling on.
Yeah, and Court has said that if they get deals with 5 or 6 content carriers, their priority will be to create unique content for all those providers. So I know they have deals with DAZN. They have deals, obviously, with beIN Sports and their YouTube show, Fusion. Whether this is going to be another place they broadcast Fusion or not, I don't know. If it is, that's going to kind of be something weird with the ratings because Fusion airing on YouTube, it becomes really fragmented.
Yeah, it's kind of the way the Impact is now, where it's sort of all over the place and stuff like that. Well, we'll get to it a little bit later, but Court has no shortage of talent available to him to fill up another show if he needs. So
right. James Gage says, "Hey," we say, "Hey" back. Welcome. Enjoy the show.
Hey, hop.
Ms. Morrison.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that's that. And, as long as we're talking about ratings, why don't I bring up the ratings for last week? We can talk about that now.
Sure.
Because we may be adding a line here for MLW if this becomes a competitive show on Vice. So here you see last week's April 12th through April 16th. Raw did over 2 million viewers. So we talked about that last week. That was a big up for them. We'll see how they do last night. NXT 805 also up. Dynamite way up, 1.2 million viewers. Impact at 132 was down. SmackDown at 1.997 also down. So that's the ratings review from last week.
Yeah, it's interesting that Dynamite number was almost double what they did the week before.
Yes.
NXT got a little bit of a bump. I think all of us expected Raw to get a bump. I mean, it's coming off of WrestleMania. I'll be curious to see what this week's Raw drew, because I think there was a lot of conversation about the Raw after Mania not feeling quite as special as it used to. So I'm wondering if that kind of hampers a little bit of what we see for the ratings as far as last night's show goes. So it'll be interested to keep an eye on that. And yeah, I mean, I'm really interested to see what this MLW show looks like, the format, how long they decide to go, whether it's a 1 hour show, a 2 hour show, or a 3 hour show. And yeah, maybe it'll push Impact numbers right away. It's a very different presentation what he does than what Impact does, and he tends to focus on half a dozen competitors to really build the show around. So we'll see.
It's interesting. Like, there's little things that MLW does to kind of set their brand aside. Like, they don't have matches; they have fights.
Yep.
That's how they market them.
Mm-hmm.
They have fighters. If you go to their website, they don't have a roster; they have fighters. So there's just little things like that present like a little bit more realism to it. They don't have extended long promos. Court has said in the past that what he does is he focuses on each person's strength and just kind of builds around that, as opposed to trying to build out the complete person. Everybody has weaknesses, and some of them are very glaring. So he focuses in certain areas. So,
yeah.
But again, those ratings from last week, I think they'll be really interested in the SmackDown rating. You can't see, but it's there just below too. But it'll be interesting over time to see how they mature. Right? Is that Dynamite number going to stay there? Is it going to grow? Is it going to drop? Same thing with NXT now that they're all unopposed. It's a really interesting story. That's why I'm going to start watching that very closely.
Yeah, it's curious with Dynamite too. Other than Mike Tyson, not any huge, real, massive announcements or anything that would have drawn that many additional viewers in. So yeah, it we'll see what that number becomes, and we'll see if NXT grows. I mean, maybe people turned on NXT on Wednesday, didn't see it was there, didn't realize that it moved to Tuesday, and that was kind of that. If you had some casual viewers and stuff like that, and who knows, maybe Tuesday's just not as good of a TV night, I guess, as Wednesday. I don't know. I tend to sit around on Tuesday and don't have a whole lot going on, so Tuesday typically works out better for me than Wednesday. But I mean, Dynamite's must watch for me. So,
and it's not completely unopposed. There is AEW Dark going on, but it's more or less unopposed.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So transitioning into this day in history, 1999, Rick Rude passed away at the age of 40. Yep. And it's been 22 years since that happened, so make us all feel pretty old.
Yeah, Rude's a really interesting character. There's a lot of different things that he had kind of going on in his career. Bret Hart credits him and Kurt Hennig as being some of the best technical wrestlers that he's ever faced. He also holds a really weird marquee in that he appeared on both Raw and SmackDown, or both Raw and Nitro in the same night in November 17th of 97. He was really furious and upset about the Montreal Screwjob, and he was loud and vocal about it and was in the locker room when it happened. And he called Bischoff the next day and said, "Listen, I need to make a change." Actually, that week he was on ECW as well on the weekend. So, and he had this really weird. A handful of wrestlers had this Lloyd's of London contract insurance policy that said if they got hurt during wrestling, there was a big payout. But if you took the payout, you had to be off of wrestling for a long period of time, which for him ended up being about 3 years. So he didn't do any wrestling, and he was kind of back and forth between WCW and stuff like that. But yeah, 40 years is pretty young. What's interesting about the Lloyd's of London, they insure all these crazy, weird things, vocal cords and different things like that. And one of the people that they actually insured during their time when they had the franchise tag was actually Pat McAfee's leg was insured by Lords of London. So if you take a look, he had a contract, and actually talked about it a little bit on his podcast, that how that worked. And I guess he didn't feel for the cost that he paid, it was worth his investment on that. But yeah, if you take a look at Lloyd's of London, there's historically some really crazy stuff that they've insured.
That's funny. Also, 2 years prior to that, there was a WWF In Your House pay-per-view subtitled Revenge of the Taker. And that was in your backyard at the Rochester Community War Memorial Arena. 6,477 fans. How close is that to capacity, Travis?
I think that's about half. Yeah.
Okay.
It's the Blue Cross Arena now, home of the Rochester Amherst, and we've still got front row tickets that are just waiting for them to return their AEW Dynamite show. So we'll be excited you'll get to take a look at the venue. I like the venue. I think it's fine. It's right kind of in the middle of downtown and stuff. I didn't look at that card. I'm sure Mick Foley won. He was the champion of In Your House.
Well, Undertaker defeated Mankind in a championship match. And
One of the rare losses.
Now, this doesn't count towards your trivia today, so don't.
Okay,
don't
good.
Undertaker defeated Mankind in WWF Championship match, and then it was main evented by a #1 contenders match between Steve Austin and Bret Hart that Austin won by DQ. So, interesting stuff. That was obviously the hotter feud. So.
Sure.
All right, let's get into news proper.
Yep.
And because we have a lot to talk about yet still on the show. Today's news is brought to you by the Body Slam Brigade newsletter. We're over 4,100 subscribers to this newsletter. Each and every week you get a drop in your inbox of all the week's news, top stories in one spot that you can read through. I also have some long form columns and stuff that I put in there. And last week was the 50th issue. So looking forward to making some changes and maybe tweaking with the frequency some. So do subscribe now at bodyslambrigade.com. So, Travis, we did the lead story already, but news out of Raw last night. I really get aggravated when something advertised doesn't come through. And they advertised for days, not just like that afternoon. It was days they advertised Braun Strowman versus Randy Orton. Now, frankly, I didn't notice at the end of the show that the match didn't happen, but it didn't happen. We did not get Braun Strowman versus Randy Orton on the show last night.
We sure didn't. Instead, we get the classic Raw Randy Orton finish of being rolled up by Riddle. So maybe this is him trying to pay off what he said on the Broken Skull things about, lifting up the younger wrestlers and putting a spotlight in there. And we got to see Braun Strowman in curious action as well.
So the other news in the show last night actually kind of surrounded those people, right?
Yeah.
So Matt Riddle got that clean win over Randy Orton. And then Braun Strowman weirdly came to the rescue of Drew McIntyre in his handicap match against Mason T-Bar. So they ended up having a tag match, in which case the masks were removed. And oh my God, Mace is Dio Madden and T-Bar is Dominik Dijakovic. Nobody saw that coming at all.
Spoilers.
I know. I actually have seen a few people like, what? It's them? But I think most people
and on the show they didn't reference them as anything other than Mason T-Bar. So maybe those poor guys are going to get saddled with those in-ring names for the rest of their career there at WWE. I don't know. I hope they get some sort of a retribution transformation thing that occurs where the two of them get.
I think they'll end up keeping the name, and then they'll slowly move away from what they looked like as members of Retribution.
Yeah, I think the two of them are big guy tag teams. I'm not sure what they bring to the table themselves as a tag team that would be extremely different than what maybe Ascension brought as a tag team. They're similar size, similar build, similar work rate, that kind of thing. But I guess time will tell. Yeah,
I'd like to compare them to Brody Lee and Rowan.
Sure. Okay, that's more fair. The Bludgeon Brothers, they're sized more appropriately and can probably work a little bit better than that. I mean, I don't know. I don't know them as either one of them as great promos, but yeah, that kind of follows suit more for sure. But yeah, I'm not sure why Braun came down to rescue Drew against Retribution. Like, there's no feud there or Hurt Business feud that I know of or anything like that. But I guess they just needed to kind of start something. So there they have it.
And then the only other piece of news on here is that Rhea Ripley interfered in Charlotte versus Asuka, cost Charlotte the match, really. And then Charlotte went absolutely crazy. She beat up the referee, viciously beat up the referee. And then afterwards, WWE announced on their website that Charlotte was fined and suspended indefinitely. So I think that makes it look like she's maybe out of the next pay-per-view. So they brought her back. The new Charlotte is now going to be sitting on the sidelines with the old Charlotte. So
we'll see.
Yep.
She's sitting on the sideline with old Charlotte and good Charlotte. I mean, the other two things that I thought were newsworthy, at least for me, is the lack of talent. We didn't see a peep or a picture or anything. No Bobby Lashley, your almighty champion, not there. We had Drew McIntyre out again, running the show, the face that runs the place. And speaking of the face that runs the place, no AJ Styles and no Omos for 2 weeks in a row. I saw some grumblings that there were some COVID issues post WrestleMania with some talent and stuff like that. So I'm going to assume, based on the fact that you don't have your two tag team champions and some of the tag team matches that we got to see the last 2 weeks, that must have been either AJ or Omos, or maybe the two of them with those issues, because 2 weeks in a row without your tag team champs seems a little curious. And how you have an entire 3-hour block of Raw without Bobby Lashley's face or anything is just amazing to me, how much they covered previous champions. So I don't know.
He's a heel champion too, right?
Sure.
I mean, of course, Roman's on every SmackDown, but
without a doubt.
But Drew as a face champion, yes, he always started the show. He usually ended the show. But Lashley's going to be a different champion, I think. So we'll see how it plays out. Hopefully, he's right back next week, or maybe he has COVID. So, okay. So then next, also on the subject of Retribution, it sounds like from the internet that Slapjack and Reckoning are moving to SmackDown. That's Shane Thorne and Mia Yim. It's not been confirmed by WWE, nor is it on their website, but it looks like that's the case.
Yeah, so that's interesting. Like, I'm not sure how familiar everybody is with regard to the TV deals and the way that stuff sort of works now that we've got a Fox situation and a USA situation, but the talent that are on the shows are essentially that network's assets in those situations. So when one talent moves from one to the other, there's a whole bunch of stuff that sort of has to happen behind the scenes to make that happen and work. So USA must not have felt too strongly about Mia Yim and Scott Thorne, where they could say, you know what, head on over to Fox and do your thing over there.
So, I mean, I wouldn't think that they would.
Yeah, they haven't really seen them on air all that much, or been impactful in any way.
If it was Drew, if 100%. It was Braun, if it was Roman Reigns, we're talking about, that's a different story.
Yep, without a doubt.
So you mentioned in the cold open about the scorching review on the A&E bio series. It was NBC News that wrote the scorching review of the biography series, and it's so weird because NBC has literally $2 billion worth of contracts with WWE, so it's weird that their news line would put out this scorching review of WWE. And I'm going to tell you, it's not WWE necessarily the content. It was scorching on WWE.
Yeah, 100%. It is baffling to me to have your news media outlet that you're affiliated with another program and programming with that much money on the line to be the one to just slice and dice your biography series. So just a very weird look. Like,
and I guess in the world of like news, yes, you have to cover the news, whether it puts, if you're a reputable news outlet, you got to cover the news. But this is something that they didn't have to cover. I mean, it wasn't really news.
Nobody was calling for it, right? It just feels like a little bit of a hit piece. And who knows? I mean, there's definitely some heat for the McMahons in general based on some of their political supports and affiliations there and stuff like that. So, somebody just decided to slip something through and maybe didn't see it. But from a business relationship standpoint, it's a real head scratcher.
Yeah, here's one line from it, and this is more about the series itself than the company. But despite award-winning producers and directors, each profile feels like a more sophisticated version of WWE's own bio packages. Each follows a similar narrative. An oddball follows a passion, gets well beaten and poorly paid, finally makes money, is consumed by the life, overcomes trauma, and then his body commences a total orthopedic collapse. That is the summary of each and every episode that they've watched, I guess. So,
I mean, that may be accurate, but not necessarily the thing you would want from your sister company kind of throwing it out there, right? Like,
they did go on to say that there are some spots of light, like Booker T. He's done very well afterwards, and even Mick Foley with some of the charity work that he's done post career and stuff. But it was just a bit of a head scratcher for me. But anyway, John Cena's Peacemaker character from Suicide Squad is getting a Hallmark ornament. Did you ever think we'd talk about Hallmark ornaments on the Daily Wrestling News Show?
Hallmark ornament with John Cena as the Peacemaker Suicide Squad character? Never
Yes.
in a million years. Never in a million years.
Yeah. So Gerald Briscoe had knee surgery, so best wishes to him because he's getting a knee replacement. Travis, one of the big show that we went, or set of shows that we went to over the WrestleMania weekend, GCW, they have a show coming up on May 1st called Ashes to Ashes. Main event's going to be Joey Janela versus Lee Moriarty.
I think there's a Mother May I show from that group of collective shows as well that's coming out. That may be the ICW one, maybe.
Yeah, there's a couple of shows on May 1st.
Yep.
For sure.
Yep.
Chelsea Green filed to trademark her name. What's interesting here is WWE has also got a pending application to trademark her name. So I guess we'll just see. I think the trademark office will look and see who had first use and go with that, which will clearly be Chelsea Green. So,
well, yeah, she'll have it since birth.
Yeah.
So that's a hard one to.
Yeah.
But who knows? We had Cody running around for a long time without that Rhodes moniker at the end of it. But
well, granted, Rhodes is a ring name, not a
sure.
So
sure.
And then we have the New Japan Cup finals are set for this Friday. Here's the tournament brackets, how they turned out. Brody King versus Tom Lawler in the finals. Travis, if you had to make a guess, you going Brody King or Tom Lawler?
Gosh, it is. So it's a really weird space because I think both when you and I talked about it, we're like, okay, well, what do they want to platform? Who do they want to build off of? Who's going to be their champion, so on and so forth. And we looked at Tom and we looked at, all of his affiliations with MLW and so on and so forth and thought, well, you know what? Who knows what's going on with Brody's contract with Ring of Honor and stuff like that. Well, just last night, I see that Brody's with Chris Dickinson in Homicide going after the 6-man tag belts with a brand new faction over at ROH. So now I'm like, I guess maybe we're back to a coin toss because you bring in Dickinson and you bring in Homicide for that. Like, who knows? I mean, Homicide hasn't been on the scene really for quite a while for a number of different reasons, but he's really well loved and well respected by plenty of workers that work hard and stiff. So I thought it was a deadlock. Brody King. Okay, we're going to have this big giant guy who big giant American guys are like the New Japan fan loves to hate. So we make for great heels, and like that would have been a great story. And obviously Tom's not going to be a face here either. So either way, you're going to have, a heel champion to kind of chase after. So I don't know. I think the obvious pick is probably Brody King. He's big and dominant and stuff like that. But Tom Lawler's kind of been the leader of the faction sort of that they've made a little bit too. So a case could certainly be made for the two of them.
I think Brody King's the way I'm going to go. But, they're both, West Coast guys. Mm-hmm. And that's where the show is being
it's a LA show
and everything. Yep. So they have a lot in common in that regard. So, it's hard to say. It's hard to say. There was another match announced, Wheeler Yuta versus Rocky Romero. Wheeler Yuta was in the Pure tournament for ROH. So he's somebody it'll be a good match. So people should check that out.
Yeah, and the other one, I think the opener too was Kratos back with Dickinson again too against Clark Connors maybe Ren Narita, which should be a decent match as well. Kratos was just on NWA Power, I think.
Yep.
Last week.
He's a NWA Tag Team Champion with what's his name? Aaron Stevens.
Ah, yes.
Yeah. So, okay, then we have tonight NXT. NXT is on tonight. We have one match: Dexter Lumis versus LA Knight. I don't know. That's gonna. I think I'll pick Dexter Lumis because he seems to be on fire. But LA Knight's brand new and he's already got one loss against Bronson Reed. So I don't know.
I'm gonna give him some credit that they took that match and the Sari match or the introduction of her and they made it into a promo spot in the middle of Raw to make a commercial for reasons why you should tune in. But that doesn't. I don't know. I feel like usually NXT has a lot more matches announced than something like that. So who knows? I hope it's not going to be a dog show because of that. So we'll see. But yeah, I'm not sure why they wouldn't announce more than a single match and
Well,
stuff like that if you had ratings that were not
yeah.
probably the bump you were hoping for.
In fairness, they probably will announce a few matches shortly after we go off the air.
Sure.
They always do.
Yep.
Kyle O'Reilly will also be on the show today, the first time since their unsanctioned match at Stand and Deliver. So, but Dynamite this week, we have 2 title matches. Tay Conti versus Hikaru Shida for the Women's Championship, and Darby Allin versus Jungle Boy for the TNT Championship, along with 4 other matches. So let's start breaking this down a bit, I guess. Let's start with Conti and Shida.
So Conti's really interesting. She's gotten a really big push lately. She's kind of come to her own. Her wrestling's gotten a hell of a lot better. She's been really impressive in the ring. She's got the DDT that they've given her. She's got wins over Nyla Rose and a couple of other champions. I mean, normally I would go into this match and say there's a 0% chance. I'd give her about a 20% chance of winning here. I think, both you and I kind of talked about it before the show started. Shida losing the belt is going to probably happen at a pay-per-view. She's had it for about 15 years at this point. So
Yeah.
It's going to be something you're going to pay some money to see her lose. And I mean, I think both you and I are in agreement that we really, really, really hope it's Britt Baker that takes that belt.
It seems that way. Britt Baker is counting the wins and losses and keeping the ranking system honest. So we'll see. She's building her case, I think, for her match at Double or Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then Darby Allin versus Jungle Boy for the TNT Championship. This is face versus face. Jungle Boy often a tag team guy, but they bring him out to do really important singles matches. And there's a lot of momentum around him. These are the 2 guys, if any, that they've really built as part of AEW. Jungle Boy could walk away with a win here. I wouldn't be totally shocked.
I would say that it's 50-50 or even better in Jungle Boy's favor, just for exactly what you said. I think that because it's a TNT title, having it change on TV is probably important for that title and for that brand in general. I would agree. I would say that the 3 young talents that AEW's kind of put the most energy into are probably, and they've all had good matches against each other. It's Darby Allin, Jungle Boy, and MJF.
Right.
And Jungle Boy could take this in like a cleanish finish with no nonsense and stuff like that. So I'm not sure where Darby would go from that. I think he's still got some business left to do with the, Matt Hardy and the rest of his faction. But I could see Jungle Boy winning this match for sure.
Yeah, and Sammy Guevara is the other person in that.
Oh yeah, that's area, right. Sammy would be the 4th youngish talent that's not attached to a tag team, because they've got a billion tag teams that are newer characters that people are not familiar with wrestling or familiar with this product would not recognize that are in the mix for sure.
Yeah, so I think that I'm looking forward to that match. I think it'll be a lot different than the Matt Hardy match, so it'll be fun. Jim Ross is sitting down with the Pinnacle, so that should be fun for everybody except Jim Ross.
Yeah, I'm assuming we're going to see the black stage the way that we kind of have with Jim before in the past, kind of shot like that, the ESPN bio area where he's had people back to the side. So it'll be interesting how it goes, because we've seen kind of all sorts of different things with that interview style. And unlike Tony Schiavone's attempts at interviewing, it should be pretty clean unless somebody dumps water over the other one and walks out or whatever. So,
yeah. I think they're always trying to recapture that Mick Foley, Jim Ross magic that put Mick Foley on the map, basically.
Yeah.
You may catch it. These are not faces, though. I'm pretty sure somebody, MJF is going to have a few fat jokes for Jim Ross and things like that. So,
well, it'll be interesting, right? Because this is going to be pre-taped and filmed, and it's not going to be live, so it'll be as clean as they want it to be.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yep. And Powerhouse Hobbs versus Christian Cage. I think Christian's probably going to get the win here, but a fun match, I think, because it's a completely different opponent than Frankie Kazarian.
Yeah, it could be, and we could probably see a DQ here. It's interesting. Like, I like the fact that Christian's, working with Hobbs. I think Hobbs could use that in ring stuff. It'll be interesting to see Christian work a bigger opponent, than somebody that's a lot more green. Yeah, and I don't know. I felt like he handled the bumps outside of the ring by Hobbs last week pretty well. So if he's moving into something with Team Taz here, kind of on his way to try to get up to the point where he's doing a Kenny thing, we'll see. It could be Christian with a DQ win here. I
I don't
wouldn't be
know.
surprised at that.
DQs are really, really rare.
I know doesn't happen all that much, or a ref stoppage, or something like that, or who knows? Like it could just be bedlam from the back. But Christian doesn't really have any friends yet, so if it's just the strength in numbers kind of thing, I don't
Right.
like his chances here.
I do like this Ricky Starks versus Hangman Page
Thank
match.
God.
Now, Page, I don't think is going to lose any matches until he gets a title match with Kenny. So I think he's going to win here, but this should be a good showcase for Ricky as well. I think this is a good match. This could go on last if it wasn't for that title match, I think.
Yeah, we got 2 titles here. I think they're probably going to lead with the title. I don't know. It's tough to call what they're going to lead with. They always lead with something hot. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Christian Hobbs as the lead, because Christian's a big name and they want to put asses in the seat and keep viewers there, and new viewers that are kind of tuning into the product are going to be familiar with Christian and go, oh, that's Christian. More Ricky Starks on the mic, more Ricky Starks in the ring. This is going to be a fantastic match if it goes any length of time, which I assume it will. And yeah, I would assume that this is probably a Hangman win as well.
Trent versus Penta El Zero Miedo. This should be a good match. What I think this is every once in a while, every 6 months or so, they remind us how good Trent is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is probably that opportunity. Plus, he's fresh back from his injury, so I think that's what that's about.
Yeah, this should be another good match as well. And Penta obviously can work his butt off, and it's weird now. He's not really part of the tag side of the Death Triangle anymore. And yeah, Trent needs to get in there and kind of prove some stuff. So who knows? Maybe this could be Death Triangle best friends 3-way match set up and stuff. And I think that'd be a great match too.
Mm-hmm.
Death Triangle needs to grab a women's wrestler so that we can do a 4v4.
Yeah,
with Statlander being part of the team. So
I mean, that was the angle that they set up on Dynamite last week or the week before. I think it was last week, where Cassidy and the Best Friends came out to say we haven't forgotten about Revolution from 2020. They're the only ones who hadn't.
AEW has long memories. They use every part of the buffalo. So yeah, those harkening back to using those storylines and making sure that it's paid off. You're going to be hard pressed to go back and look at this the way that you would some other thought shows to go, well, they didn't pay off that one time that guy gave the guy a side eye, because they pay it all off eventually.
QT Marshall versus Billy Gunn was added recently. Now, this is an angle. Obviously, this is stemming off of the Factory and Nightmare family stuff, but there was an angle on last night's Dark Elevation. Austin Gunn got a singles win over Aaron Solo. Then there was a backstage interview. Ended up with QT and Billy there. QT punched Billy right in the nose, like it didn't look like a worked punch at all. Just punched him right in the nose, and so that leads to this match tonight.
Yeah, I have to imagine that QT Brutus Marshall will be going over on Billy Gunn here.
You know what, though? It doesn't matter.
Right.
The feud's not about Old Man Gunn or QT Marshall. No. The feud is about the people on the underside. It's about your Go-Go's and your Solos and those guys, and then your Austin Gunn and your Colton Gunn. So these guys are just kind of like fanning the flames so that they can have a big feud, I think. So
absolutely.
So this is one where maybe it could go either way, and it doesn't really matter.
Right. So. Right. I would agree with that.
All right. I think that gets us through, and we're on to trivia. Your favorite part, right?
I'm the best at it.
Well, here we go. We're going to bring trivia today by Pro Wrestling Pick'em. Pro Wrestling Pick'em is a place where you can create or join a Pick'em league to test your predictive skills in the world of pro wrestling. You can go sign up now at ProWrestlingPick'em.com. It's a brand new season of WrestleMania to WrestleMania. It's a great time to jump in. Join the Essential Wrestling Podcast League. Create a league of your own. It's free, doesn't cost you anything, and it's fun to do with your friends. So, Travis, you and I are in a bunch. I'm going to defeat you soundly this year, so
probably
no questions.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Backlash 2003. You get 5 questions. A simple majority correct gets you the win. If you win, you get the Goldberg Oscar Award. If you lose, you get a Hawkins. Backlash 2003 took place 1 month after WrestleMania 19. That would have been The Rock versus Steve Austin in Steve Austin's final match. So with the A&E biography and everything, this is a timely discussion. But we're not going to start with any Steve Austin questions. We're going to talk about Sean O'Haire. He defeated Rikishi on the undercard of this event. What WWE legend managed O'Haire? Your choices are Jimmy Hart, Roddy Piper, Hulk Hogan, or Jimmy Snuka.
Jimmy Hart, Roddy Piper, Hulk Hogan, or Jimmy Snuka. Roddy Piper.
It was Roddy Piper, yes. All right.
I like Sean O'Haire a lot, actually. His death was a tragedy, and I didn't think that he got the credit that he should have. He was interesting.
Question 2. How often are you 1 for 1? That's great. So,
most of the time I'm 1 for 1.
Okay.
It all
Trish Stratus lost the women's championship to this woman. Your choices are Lita, Jazz, Ivory, or Sable.
Lita, Jazz, Ivory, Sable. I'm gonna say Ivory.
It was Jazz. Also timely since she just gave her retirement.
I didn't know if you were going to go back to that, and I almost went with that answer.
It's funny too because Jazz is going to handpick Jordan Grace's partner for Rebellion as she faces Fire and Flava. Could be Ivory
or Trish Stratus.
That's who knows. I find it hard to believe it'd be Trish, but
we'll see.
Big Show defeated Rey Mysterio on this card. Mysterio was to be carried out on a stretcher. What did Big Show do next? And your choices are push the stretcher off the stage, nothing.
He swung the stretcher like a baseball bat into the side of the ring.
Yes, that's correct. So good. So you're 2 for 3.
Mm-hmm.
The main event was a singles match between Goldberg and The Rock. Name the finish. The Rock wins with the People's Elbow. The Rock wins with a rock bottom. Goldberg wins with a jackhammer and a spear. Or Goldberg wins by disqualification.
The Rock wins with a rock bottom.
No, Goldberg wins with a jackhammer and a spear.
Of course.
So that puts you at 2 for 4. It's a must-win situation here. Brock Lesnar successfully defended the WWE Championship on the undercard against what WWE superstar? Your choices are Triple H, John Cena, Booker T, or Chris Jericho.
John Cena.
It was John Cena, 3 for 5.
Yeah, because he came out and was the big surprise for the WrestleMania Raw.
There you go.
And F5'd him.
So let's take a look at the scoreboard.
Oh, do we have to?
Not bad, though, Travis. So what happened here was
Not bad.
You went 3 for 5 last week, but in our WrestleMania 3 episode, I forgot to come up with questions. So I only had 1 question.
Well,
and so you got it right. It was Fabulous Moolah as the queen of pro wrestling at the time. So now you're going to be 7 for 11. So you're not, you're in the hunt there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actively.
So you're good. It looks like you'll end up with less questions than everybody else, but we'll see. We'll see. So there we go. So as mentioned, we have a new segment coming up in a few seconds. So don't tune out as I tell you about the Bell Time Club t-shirt. $22. It's a great shirt, great design. You'll love it. We love it. Travis has one that's sitting in my room here. I have to ship it to him. Check it out. Bodyslamclothes.com will get you there to the link where you can see all the shirts. If you use the promo code SHIRTS10, I'll give you 10% off any 2 shirts. So go and purchase that now. And then join Joey Jarzanka, Ian Schreier, and Rob DeLuca on Friday nights as they take you through the world of sports on the Primetime Rundown. Again, the show kicks off at 6 p.m. on the Eastern Observer. And then this week, it's a very special 50th episode of the Essential Wrestling Podcast. Al Carl, unfortunately, will not be there. I will be hosting. Travis is going to be there. John DeConnie is going to be there. John Smith and Gary Mahaffey. We're all there for a week of updates and highlights in the world of wrestling on the Eastern Observer tonight at 6 p.m. Again, it's the 50th episode, so do tune in. And then the Daily Wrestling News Show. We're here Monday through Thursday most weeks, but this week we're here Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. On Friday, we'll have an interview with Chris Farrow. Chris Farrow is the first cruiserweight champion at Coastal Championship Wrestling down here in Florida. So do tune in on every day, but do tune in on Friday for that interview. Should be very, very good. Okay, Travis, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Where do you want to start?
We're going to start with the good. And last night when we were having some conversations about this segment, I don't have any graphics or any fancy music yet.
Not yet.
But every week we're going to have good, bad, ugly. And it's going to be a variety of things that probably happened over the week. And Ryan said that he felt that bad and ugly was too negative. So we're going to start with that. We're going to start with two goods. So my first good, we kind of blew in the opener, which was, it was nice to see that there were more eyeballs in general at wrestling last week, with the schedule changes and stuff like that. Coming off of WrestleMania, I think predictably so, there was going to be some more people viewing. But I mean, the AEW bump was pretty incredible. The bump for NXT was really nice. Hopefully they keep that up. I love that brand. I enjoy the performers on there. It was a bit curious to see SmackDown go down after WrestleMania. I'm not sure if there was some. I wasn't paying attention because I was watching that. Maybe there was some major sports thing that was going on Friday night. I don't know why that was, because I didn't feel like the SmackDown WrestleMania part was any less interesting than what happened on Raw. But who knows? Maybe people didn't love Bianca Belair as the champion, and maybe they didn't love the Roman retention. And I don't think they teased or talked about Edge being on the show, and he wasn't on the show. So who knows? My other good is going to be from that show, actually, and some people missed out on it. I thought Pat McAfee did a fantastic job.
Yeah, he did.
And I was certainly critical of him coming in. But as a mark myself, it was really nice to see somebody in that commentary position that knew the product, was familiar with the wrestlers, knew the storylines, obviously paid attention. He was exciting, energetic, enthusiastic. I mean,
So excited that he stood up.
The shot of him standing up, as stupid and simple as that sounded and looked on, I'm like, the guy's actually into it. He's engaged with what's going on in the ring. And man, sometimes they can feel really plastic, which is going to bring me into the bad. And I've had 2 weeks now of Adnan Vic. He's just not doing it for me. And in fact, it's just the opposite of Pat McAfee. It feels like this is a guy that doesn't know the product. I mean, Corey Graves tried to bail him out a couple of times last night. I mean, he got the name wrong on the performers a couple of times, didn't call the moves. Just a guy that seems like they put in there because they felt like they needed a third guy in that booth for whatever reason. I mean, Byron's not the most exciting and entertaining person for me. Graves is fine, but I think Graves needs a strong personality on the other side to kind of balance him out. Adnan Vic is not that person. I don't believe that his tenure is going to be that long. And the ugly for me on a personal level would have been McMahon 415, which reads, "I just fired your ass." So 2 years in a row now, on April 15th, the WWE has released a whole boatload of talent from contracts and stuff. So there must be some kind of a corporate thing that triggers the 15th, was when we do our budgets or whatever it is. A whole lot of talent out there without work. I mean, you've got Samoa Joe and Chelsea Green, and I mean, Billy Kay, who was on WrestleMania, and the list goes on and on. There's a lot of opportunity out there. I mean, you know, Court's got another show firing up, and I'm sure we'll see some of these people that'll land in all the places that, you know, you and I end up talking about every week, because we cover the smaller shows.
MLW, Impact, you know, all these places are hiring. Well, I can't say they're hiring. What do I know? I don't know that. But like all these places, you know, an annual injection of talent with people that have, you know, name value. They've recently been on WWE. As the indies fire up too, these guys, this will be when their name is worth the most. So I'm interested to see what story they can write now outside of WWE.
Yeah, I think too, with the world being closer to being turned back on, this batch of talent is a much better position to work indie shows
100%.
than the previous talent,
100%.
So Callisto was another name that's interesting. I don't know, as far as where they would sort out and where they would go, it's, we could make some predictions. You had talked about Tucker going to New Japan, possibly. I think that's a really interesting place for him to land. As far as like AEW and stuff like that goes, Chelsea Green's interesting, but it's hard for me to not say that she would go back to Impact where she was successful before. And Matt Cardona. Cardona's there.
Chelsea's really close with Deanna and with Britt. So
yeah, that's the other side of it too, and who knows, with the talent share now, maybe she ends up best of both worlds. She ends up with Impact and she does some AEW stuff with Britt or without Britt and stuff. I mean, Samoa Joe is really, really compelling. For me in my dream book scenario, there's a lot of chatter about CM Punk talking about he would be happy to come back, but there's got to be the right opponent. And there's got to be the right story. Well, there's a super interesting story that could be written if Joe showed up somewheres and CM Punk kind of came out and Joe was talking some trash, and CM Punk has talked about wanting to wrestle Kenny Omega. So, man, what a hell of a three-way match. If Joe's physically not able to perform, which is what I'm going to assume if WWE's decided that they're going to let him go, their evaluations say that he can't go anymore, whatever that means. And they said the same about Daniel Bryan and Christian and Edge. So I think he's probably the most interesting high-value name out there, but Callisto is a really good worker. So love to see him somewhere. So hopefully everybody there, all that talent gets a chance to go out and continue to work if they want to in wrestling, and we'll see how they land. So that's my ugly for the week.
Yeah, Mickie James is somebody we didn't mention too, and of course she's connected with NWA with Nick and stuff, and has had an Impact run in the past. It would be interesting with this whole forbidden door being busted open if like Impact and AEW got together and said, you know what, why don't we split Samoa Joe's contract?
Sure.
You pay 50%, I pay 50%. They could do that with any number of talents. It'd be really interesting so that they don't all have to eat the total cost or whatever. But
yeah, and actually speaking of Impact, that was something that we really didn't cover all that much in the show. I'm sure we'll get into it with EWP, but it's super interesting to me that they've got Mauro coming in to commentate a match, and they're bringing Aubrey in to ref the match too. So they're putting a lot of stock into that one match. So something interesting is going to happen.
Yeah. Well, I think we're going to see a double champion at the end. And that's the interesting thing. And whether it's, I think the safe money is on Kenny Omega, but perhaps the more interesting story is Rich Swann. I mean, it would shock the world if it was Rich Swann. It would not shock the world if it was Kenny Omega.
We got to see a lot of Rich Swann WrestleMania weekend. So
yes,
Rich is a good dude.
Yeah.
Real good dude.
Yeah, somebody was chanting fake Kofi at him for a whole match, or knockoff Kofi or something like that. And Rich Swann got right in that fan's face after the match and gave him a hug.
Mm-hmm. So Rich, super classy guy.
Yeah,
definitely different than the way that Chris Dickinson handled the fan giving him jabs about not being pushed through for the New Japan Strong Cup. So Chris handled that the other way, said, bring it into the ring. I will take care of it here, and then promptly lost after getting smashed through a table.
So it appears Rich has really grown since his WWE days. Obviously, he was removed for domestic abuse or whatever there, but great. It appears to be doing very well, and Impact put trust in him, and maybe AEW will too.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right. Anything else, Travis?
Nope. I gotta make sure I freshen up these notes a little bit for my EWP appearance tonight. I get to be sort of tagged into your slot because Iceman Al Carl's on assignment again, so that'll be interesting. Building ice castles. Yep. Yeah. And then it's Tuesday and Wednesdays are big wrestling days for me, so I got to catch up on my NXT stuff, and I got to take a look at AEW on Wednesday. So it should be another good week of wrestling, and Impact should be really good as well. So.
It's their go home for Rebellion this week, so they only do 4 pay-per-views a year. This is going to be one of them, and they've got a big main event. So we'll see what happens. All right. For Travis, I'm Ryan. We'll catch you tomorrow with John Smith.